Hey there, Shadow Penguin, back again with another Skyrim build. This week I have a brave Argonian scout from Black Marsh, the Wayfinder. From the day of her hatching, towards the end of the Third Era, our build has been adventurous. Inheriting memories of survival in Black Marsh from the Hist put her on the path to becoming a hunter, and she would certainly grow up to fulfill this destiny. As lithe as she was efficient, each deliberate movement towards her hapless prey was akin to that of a spring, primed to uncoil at the slightest provocation. Her favoured weapon was the bow, with which she was prodigiously talented, but she also carried a dagger at her hip, with which to skin her prey, leaving not a single morsel of meat for carrion. In return for the herbs she would gather during her hunts, our build was taught alchemy by an Argonian shaman. Her association with him heralded a further benefit, for in the swirls of acrid smoke of the cauldron, he taught her as much of the alteration school as her ability would allow, until she had a basic yet useful understanding of the discipline. Around 30 years after our build first hatched, the Oblivion crisis occurred. Utilising his foresight, the Argonians had formed an army ready to repel the invasion of Mehrunes Dagon. Feeling an overwhelming sense of duty to protect her home of Blackmarsh, our build had joined this great Argonian army. All kinds swelled the ranks of the Argonian force, from warriors strong of limb with broad shoulders and broad-bladed swords, to shadow scales, quick of eye and fleet of foot. The Wayfinder had been assigned to a scouting unit due to the bow on her back and the pelts at her hip, which belied an experienced hunter. When the Oblivion gates opened in Blackmarsh, the Argonians were ready, and surged through before even the first danger had crawled out to meet them in battle. After establishing a foothold in Mehrunes Badlands, our build was sent to scout out a path for the army to follow. It was explained to her that while the Shadow Scale's ability in stealth and close quarters combat exceeded her own, her experiences as a hunter would allow her to traverse far more difficult terrain, faster and with less chance of injury or death than anyone else in the army. So she set off to record a path through the inhospitable landscape of the Deadlands, noting landmarks and routes where it would be far easier for the army's engineers to build pathways for the bulk of the army. On the third day of her scouting mission, the Wayfinder made a terrifying discovery. Peering over the top of a gully, she looked down into an expansive plain, on which she saw thousands of cooking fires, puncturing the inky blackness of the night. With dread, she realised that the Daedra horde that the Argonians were facing was only a flank action. A larger force sought to encircle them in a hammer and anvil that would shatter the invading force from Blackmarsh. Resolving to hurry back as soon as possible to report her find, our build heard the rhythmic clacking of what seemed like spider legs. Realising that there was no possibility of escape, for the only path available was the one from which the ominous sound emanated, the Wayfinder had no choice but to stand and fight, knocking her first arrow with a steady hand, despite the danger she was in. The first spider Daedra rounded the corner and immediately fell, an arrow piercing the spot between his eyes. The next, who was hot on his comrade's heels, died just as quickly, flung back, taken in the neck. The Wayfinder fired arrow after arrow, her ears filling with the musical reverberations of her bowstring, and the fletchings of the arrows as they twisted towards their targets. Alas, she fired until her quiver was empty, all 20 of her arrows finding their targets. With the collective howl of triumph, the few remaining spider Daedra rushed forwards. Our build was determined to fight for as long as she could, but knew that their superior strength and reach would be her downfall. She was able to twist frantically underneath one swing, but was caught on the temple with the Daedric mace, and knew no more. It was not the end. Owing to the bodies clogging the pathway in a gruesome show of marksmanship, the Daedra could clearly see our build's prowess in battle, so instead of being executed, she was imprisoned somewhere in the Deadlands, with the aim of being broken to fight for the Daedra. In the chaos that occurred after the defeat of Mehrunes Dagon, our build managed to escape her prison. She wandered through the Deadlands, using her skills to survive, but with no equipment and little sustenance, it would only be a matter of time before she fell victim to starvation, or the depredations of a Daedra. Hope was rekindled though, when she stumbled across the ruins of a Daedric portal. In an attempt to get back to Tamriel, she used her alteration magic to try and open a portal to Blackmarsh. After many attempts at magic far more taxing than any she had tried before, she succeeded in returning to her homeland, or so she thought. Stumbling through the portal, she did not feel the humidity of her home that she had been expecting. Instead, cold snow fell upon her shoulders, stinging where it reached the small gaps between the plates. Looking around, she could see nothing but snow-coated pine trees, so Bill decided to soldier on to find civilization. On this journey, she stumbled into the Imperial ambush at Darkwater Pass. Too weak to avoid capture, she was taken prisoner by the Empire and carted off to Helgen to await execution. From there, your story begins. The main skills for this build are archery, which is your main offensive option, sneak and one-handed, the latter for its lack of a cloaking mechanism. Remember that a bow kill alerts hostile NPCs, whereas an assassination with a dagger does not. Alongside these skills, you'll also be using alchemy and light armour. The gear for this build is full fur gear, as the Wayfinder is highly efficient, making her clothing from the animals she hunts, and because the climate of Skyrim is different to that which she is accustomed to. For her weapons, she will use the Falmer bow and the Skyforged steel dagger for close quarters work, with her standing stone being the Thief's Stone. Anyway, thank you very much for watching, and see you next time. This build is the brainchild of my good friend Cinder Games, with whom I do the Elder Scrolls podcast, and I adapted this backstory from one he sent to me, so be sure to check out the link in the description below. So anyway, that's all for today. See you next time. I've been Shadow Penguin Games, and see you in another video.